Now that you're right at home with cake cookies, you are going to love my pumpkin spice cake cookies. And what makes them even better, they're topped with a cream cheese frosting. So let me get right to it. I've got half a cup of unsalted butter that's been softened, and I'll just soften it up with my spatula a little more. This is a cakier style cookie than the pfeffernusse I made. In fact, they're almost like cupcakes without the paper liners. To the butter, I'll add a cup of sugar and half a cup of light brown sugar. I'll cream this together. So this first step really is very much like making a traditional drop cookie. But it's the combination of these ingredients and the way they're blended together that gives you more of that cakey consistency. I'll break in a single egg, and I'll work that in. And for this recipe, what gives the cookies their softness comes from a cup of pumpkin puree. Now, this is the pure pumpkin puree, not pre-sweetened, and it adds such a great color too. Now I'm all set for my dry ingredients that I'll sift over top, starting with 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I'll add a teaspoon of baking powder and half a teaspoon of baking soda. I'll measure half a teaspoon of salt. Then it's time for the spices. The spices here are just the kind you'd find in pumpkin pie. I'll start with a teaspoon of ground ginger, half a teaspoon of cinnamon, and a 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. I'll just stir this until blended. I think what I love about this recipe is that it's comfort food for me. It's so easy to make, it's so easy to eat, but what I love best is the smell of it baking. That combination of the pumpkin with the spices, just so soothing. All right, it does look like a cake batter, and it's going to bake like a cake batter. I've got my 2 baking trays lined with parchment, and again, you want to use the ice cream scoop to get precise cake cookies. And when you're scooping a soft batter like this, to get that precision, you scoop into the bowl and then run it up the edge of the bowl so that you get a level scoopful every time. There we go. This recipe makes 30 cookies and they're ready for the oven. It's preheated to 350 and they take about 17 to 20 minutes. Here are the cookies out of the oven and cooled completely. Because of course you want to cool them before you top them with cream cheese frosting. But you know, in addition to frosting these, you can actually use them uniced like this as a base for ice cream sandwiches. The cake cookie stays nice and soft, even in the freezer. Oh! Now, let's whip up a batch of cream cheese frosting. I've got half a cup of butter that's softened, and I'll add to that half a package of cream cheese that too has been softened. You can use electric beaters for this if you want, but you want to get some volume in there and make this nice and smooth too at the same time. I'll scrape down the sides of my bowl before I start adding my icing sugar. I've sifted 3 cups of icing sugar. I may not need all of it. It really depends on how soft your butter and cream cheese are before you start mixing. So I'll just add a little at a time until I get that ideal smooth, spreadable consistency. Now that I've got a nice consistency, I can add a teaspoon of vanilla. Beautiful. It sounds funny, but now I'm ready to frost my cookies. You can do it cupcake style if you want and pipe the frosting on, but I find it just as simple to use an offset palette knife and spread a nice layer on top of each cake cookie. And you want to keep it rustic. It's not supposed to look precious. To add a little flair, just a pinch of cinnamon completes the look. Now you can really see why this is such a comfort food for me. That pumpkin cake, so soft and tender with the cream cheese frosting. Oh, hello.